850th contact Saturday, June 24th, 2023 13.59.
Greetings, Edward. Since today is a beautiful day, I want to
be welcomed and greeted, and I think that together we...
Besides, Arlion wants to see you and tell you some things.
That's good, because some things give me trouble, which I don't understand, and that is... Besides, it should be mentioned. But let's go, because...
Absence during 42 minutes.
So here we are back again, and now we can talk about what you were talking about when we were...
But I want to leave all that out when I call up the conversation, because I think that it would not be good to report anything about what we observed and saw regarding. As a rule, I do not talk about it openly, which is...
I have absolutely nothing against the fact that you do not want to write down and name anything about it. It is probably also better if you keep quiet about it. But the fact that it is not finally understood that the scouting of the center and its surroundings is completely pointless gives me something to think about. Even for the aliens, it is impossible to locate, hear, or see us because our entire technology is far superior to theirs. Their flying bodies, which are simply called UFOs by the Earth people, and cannot be compared with our flying machines in any way, and also cannot be photographed, are far inferior to our technology. And as I mentioned before, I want to explain this again. The clear photographs of our flying machines could be made only by you and on our behalf. Also, various members around the center could only observe and see our flying machines, with one exception nightly, because we wanted them to.
Good, thank you. But it's always like that.
I can agree with you there because I also can't just...
Good. Then we are sick in the same hospital. Well, then the following. With Arlion, everything is clarified, and by the overpopulation as a result of their desires, wishes and needs by companies and corporations, the resources of the planet were plundered shamefully, and the planet was not only tormented, but also destroyed in its normal course of its inner life, while with it the people enriched themselves with endless billions of money unconscionably. It was created with it also the catastrophe of the CO2, the emergence of the air pollution. CO2 is the molecule carbon dioxide consisting of carbon and oxygen, which is also simply called carbon dioxide. The gas carbon dioxide is colorless, easily soluble in water, non-flammable, odorless and non-toxic, but destructive to the atmosphere and consequently to the climate. The exploitation of the earth, that is to say the exploitation of all kinds of resources of the earth, and their unscrupulous use and application by the overmass of mankind, creates enormous amounts of destructive CO2, that is to say carbon dioxide. This arises namely inevitably by their processing, as for example, if the earth petroleum is worked up to gasoline and diesel oil, etc., as also by the direct use of coal and natural gas. Also, the predatory excavations of rare earths, minerals, ores, and sulfur, etc. tear at the life of the planet, as the mining also deeply, harassingly hollows out the earth's interior, also superficially ghastly disfigures and destroys fertile land. This, however, as I said, also pollutes the atmosphere, and inevitably adversely alters the climate, as I already saw in the 1940s together with Svath in the future, and also that everything amounts to the Earth ultimately becoming a greenhouse planet. When I think about what Svath measured at that time, that from the year 2021, about 50 million tons of CO2 will be emitted into the atmosphere every year, then the climate change that is taking place now is no wonder, which already started to emerge in a really rapid way in the 1940s, during the World War. It is not yet fully here, but the fact that it will develop fully, cause a lot of damage to the lands and forests, bring landslides, destroy human achievements, and claim countless lives, unfortunately, will not be able to be changed. This, as well as the fact that the glaciers and the ice masses of the Arctic and Antarctic will melt away, and the frosty ground will thaw worldwide, releasing all the methane gas stored in it, and affecting all life. While methane is a much smaller part of all greenhouse gases in terms of quantity, it is much more potent than CO2. To this end, I recall Svath saying that ever the same amount of methane does much more damage compared to CO2, 32 times more over the period of a year. That doesn't seem like much to the layman, but in about 100 years, that amounts to 32 times more than the buildup of CO2. All the uranium beginning of climate change is due to human fault, and in fact everything has begun to take its beginning centuries much earlier, namely in the 13th century, as Svath said. This, as well as what we have seen with our own eyes, that due to the now effectively arisen climate change, thousands of square kilometers of forests are burning, droughts are passing over the world, most severe storms are destroying very many lands and achievements of the people, and bring immense misery, so also death and suffering, over mankind. And we also saw the many waves of refugees from all over the world, how many people died trying to get to the rich northern countries of the world, driven and led by money-hungry criminal people smugglers. We also saw how extremism spread, how murder and manslaughter became more and more widespread, even in our own families. And we saw how the rulers began to direct the people according to their whims, how they ruled and switched over the heads of the people in an unreasonable and high-handed manner. And if I think this through, then I see that all they're doing is equally insidious as at that time, when by Adolf Hitler the Nazi v Sin began. And the Nazi being does not only apply to most of the rulers of Germany and certain mad and confused parts of the population, but also to about 50 other countries and their majority of rulers and populations. Even we, it has to be said to the shame of Switzerland, have also such elements, who think and act Nazi-like and even unhesitatingly make the absolute neutrality of the country a pig, because they obviously do not know what neutrality is, and already therefore do not belong in the government, neither as a federal councillor, national councillor, nor as a council of states, who should also be neutral among themselves, and not let any partisanship arise, and consequently should not belong to any party. This on the one hand. But the fact that partisan sanctions are taken over by the EU or European dictatorship and applied against Russia, and on the other hand, strives to join this European dictatorship partially or completely, or simply to cooperate with it dictatorially. This probably not only strikes the neutrality, but all reason in the Swiss being completely out of the ground. Such machinations of incompetent government rivets, who uneducated and thoughtlessly let such manipulations pile up and betray Switzerland and its neutrality, which effectively corresponds to a national treason, do not belong in the government, and it does not matter who it is. It does not matter whether they are elected internally by the Federal Council or by the people. What has happened through the takeover of Switzerland regarding sanctions from the EU or European dictatorship and the application against Russia corresponds to a betrayal of Switzerland and its neutrality. This would have been severely punished in the last World War time, while today this is obviously simply let through as a trifle and the wrongdoers are not called to account, as this obviously happens with regard to decency and order by degenerated loudishness of rulers today, who can remain in office scot-free and continue to indulge in their wrongdoing and unjust actions, for which, however, ordinary citizens would be severely touched and punished by the law. But that's the way it is. Equal and equal are not equal, because obviously those power-hungry people who are at the helm, and this is not only the case with governments, but everywhere in the world where power-obsessed people swing their leashes and give orders, are protected from the law. Consequently, they can do whatever evil, law-breaking, wrongdoing, etc. they want and go unpunished for it, while, however, for the same offenses, indecencies, or crimes, etc., any ordinary citizen person is severely punished. This is vehemently denied by the powerful of the governments, but it is nevertheless the truth that proves, for example, the whole of the. And the toupee is still that this person does not have so much decency that he demission, or others do not demission, which are likewise not capable to lead the Amtzuzu expected to them. But decency, correctness, and righteousness are something different than giving up the office they have abused, which is held onto with every fiber of power by the known bending or breaking. And I would also like to say that I would be ashamed of myself if I ever thought of doing anything to my homeland that could harm or even harm it, let alone if anything treasonous were to pass my lips. But this is obviously absolutely no problem for certain louts in the government, who simply make a pig of our time-honored neutrality by adopting sanctions from the EU dictatorship and applying them against Russia. This, how others with the admission into the EU dictatorship Spinseln and Landesverräterisch beautiful and good child with this dictatorship make and not even know that with this, for all cases in ambush, the death penalty lurks. But perhaps these EU dictatorship willing are set in their religious faith on murder and programmed, therefore probably, because like with like shall be repaid and avenged, as it prescribes the faith. Therefore it is also usual that the imaginary God is called, if into a war is pulled, or a humans is condemned to the death and executed. Together with Svath I could also see, when I was 8 years old, during trips to the past, how Hitler from 1933 on destroyed democracy in Germany and made the country a dictatorship, for which he made the first preparations already in the 1920s. When the National Socialist German Workers' Party NSDAP arose. Seen today, the same is happening again. Only this time it is not a single person in Germany who drives or wants to drive the German people biased by word and deed to act hostilely against a government that does not suit them, and possibly also against their people, this time against Russia and its population and business world. Of course, the Russian military under the direction of Vladimir Putin has attacked the thoroughly corrupt Ukraine and is waging war there, although behind all this, today as before, America is pulling the wires. If, however, also the whole of the war in the Ukraine, though by Russia and Putin, as well as Zelensky, is roaring injustice and, moreover, despicable, the Nazi-minded in the Germany government, and with all the other like-minded governing of other countries, and their parts of the population, do not have the right to give partisan murderous help in the form of a strange world war, by deliveries of weapons etc. to Zelensky. And that all these deliveries of arms etc. are made not to Ukraine but to Zelensky, who is more than just fanatical and addicted to war. That is absolutely certain. His ambitions are the same as those of the partisan Nazi-minded rulers in sections of the population in Germany, and about another 50 other countries. How was it back then in Germany, when I heard myself as a young boy, when after the Nazi World War was shouted, "Never again war and never again an army"? Nothing of all this is left anymore, because the majority of the German people has aligned itself with America's attitude, and has somehow Americanized itself and has become American compliant, has created a new army and interferes militarily in foreign countries' affairs, together with NATO. Also, Germany has got into a new and strange world war with the arms deliveries to Zelensky by the neo-Nazi government, and has broken and betrayed all its promises of the now peacefulness of Germany. Germany has not kept its word and has betrayed itself, has developed as a word-breaking liar state, with Nazi riffraff at the government, to whom the righteous and good of this government and all the righteous parts of the population cannot teach what a word of honor of the right, of peace, of decency, of non-partisanship, and of truth etc. is. With Germany in the lead, as a roaring bad example, about 50 other countries and parts of their governments and populations go along, in order to draw likewise Nazi-like with Germany and to lead a world war, as it in this infam perfid form such has never existed so far on earth, and the unbelievable insidiousness of the Nazi v sin reveals. Well, all what has been said so far is not yet the end of the song, because the lack of understanding and the unreasonableness of the earthlings are far greater than ever before in the history of mankind this was revealed. Instead of the earthlings becoming more knowledgeable and clever with regard to the extent of their logic, understanding and reason, exactly the opposite has happened and continues to happen. The environment is polluted, against which is demonstrated, since some time also by the crazy and brainless, which out themselves as hand stickers on the asphalt, which besides still everywhere where it is possible, everything possible and impossible as well as valuable with color spray and destroy, and cause consequently idiotic damage. This has the opposite effect of what is intended, because firstly, a lot of money must be spent on security forces, because against the demonstration actions, the police and sometimes also the medical profession and the fire department must be called out, so that order can be restored, and the traffic obstruction can be removed. On the other hand, horrendous demonstratively and maliciously caused damages have to be repaired by expensive repairs, if this is still possible at all. Apart from all this is then still the stupidity of the governing ones, which can be driven by the idiotic and pathologically stupid demo actions in fear and to completely wrong decisions, as for example to the idiocy of the setting up of wind turbine fields, whereby the landscapes are completely obstructed and messed up, and the entire bird world and the animal world accustomed in the area is driven away or killed. This is done for the purpose of electric power generation, as it is done elsewhere by large solar energy panel fields, which occupy huge areas of fertile land on a large scale, making it absolutely impossible to use them for planting and harvesting natural food. Also, the mountains are considered for it. Consequently, also these are disfigured, and testify to the fact that that stupid part of the not thinking as well as fearful governing, and their just as stupid fellow runners from the people, are incapable of thinking. All this happens while the overpopulation increases rapidly, uncontrolled and unstoppable more and more. Why truly and effectively finally this truth should be made known worldwide by the authorities and governments. What I still want to say, because it must be said, especially young people often demonstrate completely senseless and damaging for environmental protection, because they do not understand that this is probably right, but only if the overpopulation is reduced, respectively that environmental protection can only work if the mass of mankind is drastically reduced. However, this is only possible if the young and older female and also male demonstrators finally understand that the overpopulation must decrease resoundingly and drastically, and be limited far under 1 billion. This is because it is the mass of humanity that is polluting and destroying the planet, all ecosystems, the waters and nature, as well as the fauna and flora and the atmosphere, and ultimately having a devastating impact on the climate. The gigantic 10 billion-fold mass of the Earth humanity, whereby the Earth is able to carry and to nourish truthfully only 530 million humans completely normally and naturally as well as without any problems, together with the animals existing worldwide, the animal and other living beings of all kinds and species, is to blame for the resource exploitation of the Earth, as also for the epidemics and pandemics, which can be rampant only due to the overpopulation. Also, many diseases could develop only as a result of the mass humanity, often by chemical poisons, which are spread with respect to the natural food planting, and which settle in the vegetables, herbs, and fruits, and store themselves in these. This is in addition to the fact that other foodstuffs, especially industrially produced ones, contain toxic chemical substances which, when consumed over a long period of time, cause illnesses, the best example being the ever-increasing incidence of cancer and the resulting deaths. This exploitation of the Earth brings with it that CO2 emissions arise from the resources robbed from the Earth, namely by their reprocessing, processing, and the use, how from it again waste products arise, which are carelessly disposed of by the earthlings in the free nature and in the waters, whereby the environmental pollution originates, against which stupidly one demonstrates. Stupidly, therefore, because the demonstrators contribute even everything to it, in order to push the overexploitation of the Earth and the destruction of the atmosphere, and thus the climatic change, as well as the environmental pollution further. Alone the producing of vehicles of each kind, the moving with gasoline or diesel vehicles, the producing of writing paper, the food preparation, the body care means of all kinds, packing materials of all kinds and, like also the various garbage, etc., which goes alone on the environmental destruction of the demonstrierenden, is already many times more than only a pappenstiel. But these do not think about it, because to them is only important that they can freak out, make a racket, cause damage and demonstrate as well as shout around, while that, for which they demonstrate allegedly and lead a big word, is in reality only secondary matter. And that the demonstrators are partly still paid for the fact that they demonstrate at all and cause damage, for which there are special sponsors, that is of course concealed. Well, the stupidity of certain earthlings is well known, and that of all things the misguided and unenlightened demonstrators of both sexes belong to it. That is not surprising. The truth is that if already nothing valuable is learned at knowledge, and the whole of this knowledge consists only in talking stupidly, simple-mindedly and senselessly in the hand telephone, and this is therefore the whole wisdom, then, as one says, hop and malt is lost. This namely in the sense that neither the necessary logic, understanding nor reason are present to understand that specifically the right thing must be done to remedy all the evils rampant on earth. It is not considered, therefore, that with itself must be started, and everything must be brought correctly and in order, before on the fellow men is gone off, and from them this and that is demanded, which is not done however specifically, and possibly still against it is violated. And if the speech of it is, then it does not only concern not to pollute even the environment, and to take as far as possible from all what is needed at luxury and unnecessary articles, which are fabricated by the destructive resources exploitation at the earth. It is above all about it, and for it would have to be demonstrated definitely meaningfully, that a worldwide and very long birth stop is urgently necessary, so that the earth humanity is reduced in this way.
And it would be good and meaningful, as our committee thinks, and also for the earth humanity suggests, if namely a state control would be decided worldwide by all states, which pays attention and is aligned to the fact that controlled during 3 years, no births take place, which then 1 year again controlled births can follow and are permitted, in order to let follow then again, 3 years, a controlled birth stop. This would have to be held and carried out so long until the overpopulation will be reduced to such an extent, until it falls under 1 billion humans, if possible on little over 500 million. In this drastic way alone, the already ongoing disaster can be stopped, and in the course of time normalized again, but normal to what will result from the climate change, which is not exactly pleasing, as Ptah has read out of the annals of Sfath and informed us about it.
Yes, mankind will not exactly have a pleasant future, not only as a result of overpopulation, but also with regard to technology with interaction capabilities, as with human visual sense and other senses, also hearing, reading, speaking and writing belong to it, as well as independent decision-making and acting. If everything rapidly develops into intelligent systems and reaches a level of performance that exceeds that of humans and finds its way in situations that go far beyond the capabilities of human thinking and thus far exceed its cognition. If the whole of the irresponsible development is not stopped early, then the cognitive flexibility of the future intelligent technology will become so independently powerful that a monitoring and self-control of its own cognition and a gross knowledge will arise, so to speak, an overcognition. But now something else. Many genera and species of alien insects have been introduced into Switzerland, Europe, and all over the world, by transports of goods of all kinds from all over the world. A large part of these insects and beetles, etc., spread dangerous viruses and cause diseases, or they are even poisonous, whereby the insectologists or entomologists usually only notice that new insects, etc., have migrated or been introduced when they already begin to spread. So we already noticed in the center, it was at the early beginning of the 1980s, when the film crew from Japan and those from the USA were here and made the recordings. When, for example, several tiger mosquitoes were running around in the kitchen at the windows and wanted to go outside. I already knew these mosquitoes from the Far East, as the Japanese also knew them, and were surprised that these mosquitoes could also be found in the center. It was not until many years later that insectologists began to talk about the tiger mosquito being introduced in the north of Europe, but first in Italy. However, insectologists did not know that the tiger mosquito was already present in Switzerland in 1980, just as zoologists and ornithologists do not know everything that effectively moves in the Swiss area in foreign creatures. That on the other hand also other foreign creatures and insects, beetles, as for example the Japanese beetle and other little animals etc. have spread in Europe etc. and are further introduced, that should be known now, however, not that some have remained undiscovered so far. And with that I have actually said everything and already more of what I wanted to say.
Then I want to ask you about it. Do you still have the photo you took when you were with Bermunda at the... You were in America that night and photographed the alien flying object behind the Capitol? Ta said at the time that you should keep quiet about it, but now I think it's okay to talk about it.
For this you have already asked me about the picture, which I then asked Bernadette further and received from her a stick on which the photo is recorded. Here is the stick, and I think I can now safely show it openly.
I think so too, as I said before.
Here, in the computer you can look at it, Just a moment. Here it is. Unfortunately, I had only an instant camera, but I think that I could take a good photo of the object even at night, which was shining brightly just at the moment when I pressed the shutter button of the camera. Everything around was brightly illuminated, and then the object shot away in a flash and without a sound. To which group of strangers it belonged, even Bermunda did not know.
Interesting, Bermunda told me about it, but we did not manage to find out which strangers were there. However, we were able to determine that the Capitol security forces did not notice anything about the object, not even when it lit up brightly and illuminated everything far away.
Which is certainly a good thing, because I assume that they would have fired idiotically and senselessly if they had seen the object or otherwise detected its presence. That's how stupid they really are in America, because those who are politically big-minded or like-minded people can't really and truly think, and that probably includes the Capitol security forces and the military, who would rather kill and murder than think and protect lives.
I think so too, so I'm of the same mind as you.
Well, then I still have question. Wars on Earth were already led before millennia. That is well known to me, however I'm interested. When with you Pleiarans the war leading would be terminated, and or when the last war would be led.
Capitol, back of the building.
I can answer this question for you because this is part of our general knowledge that we Pleiarans learn. The last war our ancestors fought was about 56,142 years ago, involving territorial claims.
And what about what I asked about dementia? Were you able to ask if there was any protection or otherwise preventative measure against that?
For this, I was taught that there are no medical means on Earth and also with us, which serve for the prevention or for the prevention of the dementia phenomena. A dementia condition is based, so it was explained to me, on effects of thoughts as well as feelings, and thus in this respect.
On a condition, which results from thoughts and feelings, and which is called with us briefly simply psychic damage, and which is as a result of the thinking and feeling thus of psychic origin. A lifestyle led in such a way that on the one hand wrong thoughts are cultivated and thereby wrong feelings are generated, results in what is called a psychological state, and in the case of bad thoughts and corresponding feelings. Then just a bad psychological state, which increases the risk of dementia. The fact that the characteristics of the character of humans play just as important a role, as also its activities, that should be actually conscious each earthling, because this is very important, in order to be fit not only from the vertex to the soul, but also consciousness-wise, and thus with the function of the brain. It is altogether therefore everything this referentially important in order to prevent a dementia illness, that at least I take from what you wanted to say just now. Or am I wrong?
You are right and you think very quickly. That is actually what I wanted to say, because the human being himself conjures up the dementia disease, so it was explained to me, if he does not keep himself fit in every conceivable way, so physically and consciously, and so with healthy and powerful, as well as logical, mind-strong and reasonable thoughts, creates the corresponding feelings. This means that man has to lead a lifestyle of all-time conscious activity, because depending on how he leads his life in a relaxed, as well as serene way in this respect, he avoids a dementia disease. So, if possible, he should avoid any stress, isolation in social intercourse with other people and with the environment. If all in all a positive lifestyle and a healthy attitude to life and the contact with the fellow men and the nature as well as with the whole environment is cultivated, then a dementia illness can be avoided as far as possible. To a large extent, however, does not mean that other and health factors cannot play a certain role in the development of dementia, but either way, a consistently fulfilling social life, as well as a healthy, well-educated character, ever plays a very important role that the person is spared from a dementia disease until old age, as was impressively explained to me.
That's obvious.
Then I want to end the conversation for today and leave. Goodbye, Edward, my friend.
Bye.
Goodbye and see you soon.